Mr. President, I rise today to speak on the bipartisan budget deal that is currently before the Senate. Chairman Ryan and Chairman Murray have shown us true leadership on divisive and complex budget issues. The legislation we have before us today is the embodiment of compromise, something that has unfortunately been absent in Washington as of late. They have crafted a bill that sets forth the guidelines for spending for the remainder of this fiscal year and the platform for the next fiscal year. This deal will set overall discretionary spending for the current fiscal year at $1.012 trillion, an amount that is approximately halfway between the Senate budget number and the House budget number. This number is also less than the 2000 spending level set forth in Chairman Ryan's 2011 budget. While the overall spending number is higher than what I would have wanted, the House and Senate Budget Committee chairmen were able to craft a budget deal that produces $23 billion in net deficit reduction. Now, very honestly, $23 billion with the deficit that we've been running is a mere pittance. And I think all of us who are concerned about the debt and the deficit of this country would like to see that number higher. But more importantly, they have produced a budget that will set in place some fiscally responsible spending policies and give us a way forward. Regardless of how each member of this chamber feels about the resulting policy, we should all recognize the importance of this agreement and thank the chairman for their tireless work to end this chapter of political disagreement. Although I would still prefer a grand bargain to solve our fiscal crisis, this deal marks the first step in that journey. Congress will now be in a better position to tackle the issues of taxation and entitlement reform in the short term. And I truly hope that the committees of jurisdiction will take this as a sign that that does need to be what happens next if we are truly going to address our fiscal issues. Mr. President, the budget deal before us is not perfect. There's a lot in this proposal to like, and there's a lot in this proposal to dislike. But there's one provision related to military retirement pay that will certainly have to be addressed after the passage of this bill, and it's one of the provisions that, frankly, I don't like. I'm told by Pentagon officials that this provision basically came out of nowhere. I think it is terribly unfair to our men and women in uniform. They should not have a disproportionate share in our deficit reduction measures. However, I feel confident that this issue will be resolved in the near term. I've had a conversation with the chairman of the Committee on Armed Services, as well as a number of other members of the Armed Services Committee that are committed to making sure that we address it and that hopefully we come up with some alternative before this provision takes place, which doesn't happen, interestingly enough, until December of 2015. Many Georgians have served with honor in our military, and while the changes to their annual cost of living increase may appear insignificant on paper in this bill, this is real money promised to those who put their life in harm's way in defense of this nation. And I want to assure our servicemen and women that there is ample time to address this issue before it takes effect, and I'm committed to addressing it, and I will not turn my back on those who fight and have fought for this country. That said, this budget deal is a necessary and crucial step towards a functioning Congress. With passage of this budget deal, we can close the book on discretionary spending arguments for the next couple of years. We can turn our full attention to entitlement reform and tax reform as Congress debates raising the debt ceiling once again next year. Also, with this bill, we will no longer need to provide additional flexibility for defense spending. This bill will give the defense community the resources they need, number one. In conversations with top officials at the Pentagon and within the intelligence community over the weekend, they have urged the support of this bill as a way to address their current budget crisis. And I am extremely sympathetic to both those communities and wanted to make sure that whatever product came to the floor of the Senate that it did that, and this bill does address the shortfalls as well as the flexibility issue in the defense community as well as in the intelligence community. I was pleased the approach that the budget chairman took will not turn off sequester, but will instead extend the mandatory cuts for an additional 2 years beyond what the Budget Control Act prescribed. Because as I see this is about an $85 billion fix on the sequester that keeps it from going too deep into the defense budget that had the potential for causing real problems within the Pentagon as well as within the intelligence community. Mr. President, with this budget deal, we can also put in place a 302A budget allocation, the top line number that Congress can spend on discretionary spending. This will, for the first time in several years, allow the Appropriations Committee to do the job that is actually intended that they do. Our appropriators have previously been forced to make spending decisions without a top-line number and through continuing resolutions. They had no information and no guidance from Congress. It's no wonder that our spending has caught up with us. The country benefits when Congress approaches the appropriation process through regular order and not through last-minute continuing resolutions. This agreement makes that process more likely. The Budget Committee chairmen have also made a good faith effort to attack the real problems in our budget by cutting money from mandatory programs rather than searching for more discretionary cuts. In their agreement, they took notice of how often the federal government has given special treatment to certain groups, and they have taken efforts to curb that. And while many outside groups may attack these reforms, they are representative of the types of reforms that will have to be included in any future agreement to achieve entitlement reform, which at the end of the day is where the real problem in our federal budget lies. Mr. President, this deal does little to address the $17 trillion debt, but it is a start down that road, and I truly hope this will lead to more serious discussions on the floor of the United States Senate about our debt and a solution for how we're going to see that $17 trillion repaid. In all, Mr. President, this budget deal represents a partial completion of the work the American people expect from us. While far from perfect and leaves much to be desired, but the prospect of compromise on the single most important issue of our time requires the attention and serious looking by every member of this body. I will vote for the passage of this bill because it lays the groundwork for the next chapter in our pursuit of fiscal sanity. Mr. President, for 3.5 years now, Senator Warner and I have been involved in seeking out a much larger debt and deficit reduction deal than what is currently before us. We know the American people are tired of out-of-control spending and don't understand why Congress can't address our $17 trillion debt. It's not rocket science. The Bowles-Simpson Commission gave us a roadmap 3 years ago this month, and I regret that the White House has not followed the leadership of its own commission. But this bill represents a small step towards the type of cooperation that will be necessary to comprehensively address our debt and deficit. It is my hope that this agreement allows that effort to restart in a meaningful way. And Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.